Hi, I'm Marlene. I wasn't invited when my grandson got sick. I showed up anyway, and my son told me to go home. Then he said I was pretending to be ill, just to get sympathy. But that wasn't the worst part. Worse was watching the family I raised crop me out of their photos, block my number, and call me a liar in front of the people I've known for decades. They turned bedtime stories into evidence, birthday gifts into weapons. So I ask you, how do you stay a mother when your own child rewrites who you are? I had just finished rinsing my tea mug when the phone rang. It was Adrian, short, clipped tone as always. He mentioned that Owen had come down with a fever and a cough. The pediatrician suspected it was just a virus, but they were keeping him home for a few days. His voice didn't waver, didn't tremble with concern like I'd expected. Still, hearing about my grandson being unwell made something stir in me. Instinct, I guess. I hung up and stood at the kitchen window, the sky outside dull and purple-gray. Wichita Falls always felt colder in late February, especially after sunset. I didn't think twice before pulling out the chicken stock from the freezer. In the fridge, I still had those carrots and parsley I'd bought on sale last week. While the broth simmered, I pulled out a soft blue blanket I'd crocheted for Owen 2 Christmases ago and laid it next to the storybook I'd picked up at a yard sale. The Little Engine That Could, his favorite. My hands moved without thought, folding the blanket, placing the soup in a thermos, slipping the book into a tote bag. I didn't call to say I was coming. I didn't think I needed to. By the time I hit the road, the sun was already dipping behind the tree line. The drive to Austin took just under 5 hours, but I made it in 4.5. I barely noticed the radio. My thoughts were filled with the weight of that tote bag on the passenger seat, and the faint hope that this might be a small step toward mending, whatever this rift between Adrian and me had become. I arrived just past 9. The neighborhood was well lit. Rows of manicured lawns, tidy mailboxes, porches glowing under recessed lights. His house stood there, polished and perfect. As I walked up the stone path, I could see the soft flicker of a television through the living room window. Shadows moved inside. I rang the doorbell. I waited. I rang again. No one answered. Through the glass, I could make out the back of the couch. A small head peeked over for just a second, Owen's. Then it vanished like smoke. My heart pounded harder. I rang once more, longer this time. Still nothing. I took out my phone, hand trembling, not from the cold but from confusion, and called Adrian. The ringtone buzzed behind the door. He picked up. "Mom?" His voice was calm, almost annoyed. "I'm outside," I said. "I brought soup for Owen. And a few things." A pause. "Mom, now's really not a good time," he said. "We're keeping things low stress around here. Owen needs rest, and we need space." "But Adrian, I just want to drop this off. I won't stay." "You showing up unannounced doesn't help," he cut in. "Please respect our boundaries." I stared at the door as he spoke, wondering when that became something we had. Boundaries. Back when he had night terrors, I would sleep on the floor next to his bed, just to keep him from waking alone. Back when he broke his wrist in 5th grade, I stayed up every night icing his cast. I didn't need permission then, but now I was on the other side of a door that wouldn't open. Through the door, I heard the bark of their dog, Cooper. And then silence. "Good night, Mom," he said. "We'll talk later." The line went dead. I stood there a while longer. The wind picked up. The soup was getting cold. I knelt down slowly and left the tote bag on the doorstep. Something about the act felt final, like leaving behind more than just a gift. Walking back to my car, I didn't cry. My throat ached, but the tears held back, not out of pride, but preservation. Sliding into the driver's seat, I turned the key. The engine sputtered once, a hesitant stammer before coming to life. I stared at the wheel, blinking slowly, the weight of the silence inside heavier than any words Adrian could have said. "I used to rock you on my chest when you were that small," I whispered. The engine stuttered once before I could turn the key, and I wondered if that too was a sign. The drive home from Adrian's was long, not just in miles. The road was mostly empty, and I didn't turn the radio on. I let the silence stretch, heavier than the tote bag now sitting on the back seat, untouched. By the time I got home, it was past 2 in the morning. I didn't even take my shoes off. I collapsed onto the couch and let sleep come without protest. Morning sunlight crept through the blinds before my eyes opened. My chest felt tight, like someone had wrapped it in wire overnight. At first, I thought it was just emotional hangover, but the pressure didn't fade. When I stood to fix myself a cup of tea, a wave of dizziness washed over me so sudden I had to grip the counter for balance. I sat down, heart pounding harder than it should have for a slow morning. My hands, still cold, reached for the drawer next to the fridge. Inside was a folder with old medical forms, blood work, prescriptions, letters from a cardiologist I'd seen 2 years back. Nothing dramatic, but enough for a quiet warning. Pay attention to stress. I hadn't. I scheduled an appointment with Dr. Levin that same morning. His receptionist, Bonnie, squeezed me in at noon. I didn't call Adrian. Not yet. I needed to hear the truth from someone who looked me in the eye. Dr. Levine wasn't a dramatic man. He examined me thoroughly, made notes, then leaned back in his chair with a sigh that told me everything before he even spoke. "Your EKG's off baseline," he said. "Early stage atrial fibrillation. Not dangerous yet, but it's the kind of thing we need to manage carefully. That means rest. That means you can't keep carrying the weight of things you don't talk about." He handed me a prescription and a printout of dietary adjustments. I nodded, folding it all neatly into my bag. On my way out, I turned back at the door. "Do you think I should tell my son?" He looked up from his computer, but didn't answer right away. I didn't wait. Back home, I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at the blinking green light on the answering machine. I picked up the phone and dialed Adrian. He answered after the second ring. "Hi, Mom. Something wrong?" "I went to the doctor today," I said, trying to keep my voice even. "I've been having some tightness in my chest, dizzy spells. He said I have a heart rhythm issue. Nothing life-threatening, but I just thought you should know." Silence stretched long enough. I thought the call had dropped. Then he laughed, short, almost scoffing. "Are you really calling me just to guilt-trip me? After last night?" I blinked. "Adrian, You know how this looks, right? First, you show up uninvited. Now suddenly you're sick." I gripped the edge of the mattress. "I'm not asking for anything," I said quietly. "Just thought you should know. Don't fake being sick to get in, Mom. It's manipulative, and frankly, it's getting old." The line went dead a second later. I sat there, the receiver still in my hand, listening to the dial tone as if it might offer a second opinion. I didn't move for a while. The silence in the house was thick, not peaceful, but padded with disbelief. I walked into the kitchen, not because I was hungry, but because I needed to do something with my hands. I opened the cabinet, took out the bottle Dr. Levin had prescribed, and placed it on the counter. It sat there, unopened, for the rest of the day. That afternoon, I pulled out an old journal I hadn't touched since Owen was born. The pages smelled like dust and lilacs. I wrote only one sentence. When did my son start thinking I would lie to be loved? I left the rest of the page blank. I didn't need more words to describe the ache pressing against my chest. Not the medical one, but the kind that doesn't show up on an EKG. I didn't sleep that night. I kept looking at the envelope I planned to send him, a handwritten letter I'd started drafting before the call. I'd hoped it would feel personal, like it might reach him in a way my voice couldn't. In the end, I sealed the envelope with shaking hands, not realizing that a lawyer would read it before my son ever would. I had always believed that words, when chosen carefully, could heal. Maybe that was the teacher in me, or maybe it was just something I clung to in the absence of being heard. After Adrian hung up on me, I sat in my kitchen for what must have been hours. The sun rose and fell behind the trees, and I hadn't moved from the table. Eventually, I pulled a notepad from the drawer, the thick kind with blue lines, and a faded grocery list on the back. I didn't start with Dear Adrian. I just started writing. I wrote about the time he broke his collarbone falling off his bike, and how he wouldn't stop crying until I wrapped him in a blanket and read from that tattered cowboy book he loved. I wrote about the mornings I skipped breakfast so he could have lunch money. I wrote about my mistakes, too. How I worked too much, how I thought discipline would protect him from pain, how maybe I wasn't soft enough when he needed me to be. Then I wrote the words I hadn't said in over a year. Please let me see Owen. I signed it simply, Mom. The next morning, I drove it to the post office myself. On the way, I stopped at that gas station off 281, the one with the faded open 24 hours sign. They had a small spinner rack of children's books near the candy aisle. I picked out one about planets. Owen had just started learning the names of them in school. I slipped the book into the envelope, alongside the letter, sealed it, and dropped it into the outgoing box. Driving home, I allowed myself the tiniest sliver of hope. Maybe this would be the moment that opened a door again. Quietly, gently, without conflict. Just a child seeing his grandmother again, and a mother hearing her son's voice, not wrapped in judgment. But days passed, then a week. I checked my phone like it was a lifeline, screen lighting up with offers from pharmacies, political messages, scam numbers, but not him. One evening, as I was cleaning the lint trap from the dryer, my phone buzzed. The name that popped up stopped me cold. Owen. My hands trembled as I unlocked the screen. The message was just 3 words. I miss. And then it disappeared. Deleted. Withdrawn. My stomach turned. That hadn't been his doing. Kids don't unsend love. Parents do. I didn't sleep that night. The next morning, I was making tea when the call came. Unknown number. I almost let it go to voicemail, but something in me picked it up. This is Elias Dorner, the voice said. I'm calling on behalf of Mr. and Mrs. Klein. We're the family's legal representation. I blinked, unsure what I was hearing. Yes, I managed. We've received your letter, he said flatly. And moving forward, we request that all communication with the Kleins go through our office. No direct messages, no drop-ins. This includes Owen. I paused. I wrote a letter, not a subpoena. Of course, but Mr. Klein prefers not to engage emotionally at this time. Emotionally, as if affection was a liability, as if motherhood was a transaction. I hung up without another word. Later that afternoon, I found myself standing in the guest bedroom, the one I used to keep toys in for when Owen visited. There was still a Lego on the floor, half buried under the dresser. I didn't pick it up. I just looked at it until my eyes blurred. Eventually, I made tea, sat on the couch, and opened the old family photo album I kept tucked behind the cookbooks. Halfway through, I found the picture. Adrian at age 6, missing a front tooth, holding a handmade card in crayon. Best mom ever. He had written it in crooked letters, upside-down hearts drawn in the corners. I slipped the photo from its sleeve and carried it to my nightstand. No frame, just leaned it against the lamp. That night, I didn't cry, but I didn't sleep either. The envelope I sent came back with a return address I didn't recognize, but the handwriting was mine. The envelope I sent had been returned, unopened, the edges wrinkled like someone had crumpled it and thought better of it halfway through. I placed it on the kitchen counter, then stared at it as if staring hard enough would give me answers. It didn't. A week later, the unexpected arrived. A text from Adrian. Short, polite, cold. We're having a small dinner for Grandpa's remembrance this Sunday. You can come if you'd like. Vera's cooking. For the first 5 minutes, I thought it had been sent to me by mistake. Then I reread it. Again. And again. I didn't reply immediately. I sat with it, debated. Maybe it was a sliver of peace. Maybe they were tired of fighting. Or maybe it was just optics. Either way, I said yes. On Sunday morning, I baked a cherry pie. Not store-bought, not frozen. I made the crust from scratch, just like I used to when Adrian was little. It had been his grandfather's favorite. I wrapped it in foil and placed it carefully in the front seat like a guest. Their house looked pristine, like it belonged in a catalog. As I approached, I noticed their neighbor, Mr. Hamilton, raking leaves. He didn't wave. He usually did. I rang the bell. Vera opened the door. Her smile was brittle. "Hi, Marlene. You look well," she said without warmth. "Come in." Inside, the house smelled like roasted rosemary chicken and lemon candles. The dining table was already set. Silver napkin rings, stemmed glasses, everything in its right place. Except me. Every chair had a name card. Mine wasn't at the main table. It sat at the end, nearest to the kitchen door, between the baby's high chair and a coat rack. I placed my pie gently next to the main dishes. No one thanked me. Dinner began. Conversation buzzed like static. I tried contributing, asked Owen about school, complimented Vera's table runner, but no one bit. Then came the toasts. Adrian stood and raised his glass. "To Grandpa," he said, "a man who taught us about family, hard work, and not hiding from responsibility." There were murmurs of agreement. Then his tone changed. "And speaking of responsibility, some people think that a family dinner is the right time to show face, to make up for years of being absent, dropping off pies and writing letters as if that erases the past." The air went still. He looked directly at me. My fork froze mid-air. Trying to bribe your way into my son's life with food and guilt doesn't make up for what you didn't do. Silence. Even the baby stopped fussing. No one looked at me, not even Vera. She sipped her wine like it was water. I didn't say a word. I looked down at my plate, untouched. My hands, though steady, felt like they weighed more than they used to. In that heavy pause, my mind drifted. I saw the birthday card I'd mailed to Owen 3 months earlier. Bright orange envelope, stickers on the corners. It had come back with a red stamp across the front. Refused, returned to sender. I never showed it to anyone. It lived in the bottom drawer under my dish towels. I tucked my napkin on the plate and stood. I didn't make a speech. I didn't argue. I didn't beg. I left. I walked past the kitchen, where my pie still sat on the counter, untouched. Its foil had been peeled back slightly, as if someone had considered it, and decided not to. Outside, the air was cooler than when I arrived. I sat in my car, watching condensation gather on the windshield. Every breath fogged the glass more. I used to think silence meant grace, strength. Maybe it still does. But right then, silence didn't feel strong at all. It felt like loss. The condensation had barely faded from the windshield when my phone buzzed again. This time, it wasn't Adrian. It was Martha, my neighbor from 3 streets over. "Hey," her message read, "are you okay?" No context, no follow-up. I blinked at it for a moment, confused. Then curiosity nudged me to open Facebook. There it was. A photo of Adrian, Vera, and Owen in matching sweaters. Owen was holding a mug of hot cocoa, Vera's hand resting on his shoulder like a staged magazine ad. The caption read, "We thrive when we clear out toxicity, sometimes even family." A quote. A trap. Beneath it, the comments came fast. "Love this energy. Boundaries matter. Classic mother-in-law drama." And then, the one that made my stomach twist. "You're doing the right thing. Some people just don't know when they're no longer welcome." Vera had reacted to that one with a laughing emoji. I stared at the screen for what felt like hours, each new comment scratching fresh skin off a wound I hadn't even named yet. Later that afternoon, I opened my laptop. A thought had started forming sometime between brewing coffee and staring blankly at the laundry I never folded. I opened the voice recorder. My tone was soft, familiar. "Hi, Owen, it's Grandma. I know we haven't seen each other in a while, but I thought maybe you'd like a story tonight." I read The Giving Tree. My voice didn't crack once. Not when the boy grew up. Not when the tree was left with nothing but a stump. When I finished, I paused, then added, "I love you, just in case you need to hear it tonight. I exported the file and emailed it to Vera's old address, the one she'd used before they switched over to that shared family account. Subject line, "For Owen, only if he wants." I didn't expect a reply. But that evening, my phone rang. Adrian. I answered quickly, thinking maybe, just maybe, it had reached him. "You seriously sent him a story?" His voice was sharp, clipped. "I didn't send it to him. I sent it to Vera. For him, if he wanted." "Stop pushing yourself into his head, Mom. You're manipulating a child. Do you get how sick that is?" No, you don't get to just. You're done here. We've had enough of your tactics. You're not part of this family anymore." He hung up. I didn't call back. I didn't cry, either. Not this time. Instead, I reopened the file. I sat there in silence, letting the sound of my own voice reading that book wash over me one last time. Then I deleted it. All of it. Gone. I opened my journal, something I hadn't touched in years, and wrote 2 lines. "I am not toxic. I am not invisible." I closed the cover and placed it on the shelf next to my recipe books, where I knew it wouldn't gather too much dust. The clock ticked loudly in the background. It hadn't bothered me before. Now it felt like it was keeping count. Of what, I didn't know. Maybe how long it would take before I disappeared entirely. Before bed, I pulled out my old phone, the one I no longer used for calls, but still kept charged. It held voicemails from years ago, little moments I hadn't erased. Most were mundane, one wasn't. Owen's voice, age 4. "I love you, Grandma." That was all. I saved it again under a new name. Proof I was loved. The next photo I saw, I wasn't just invisible. I was erased. I don't know what I expected when I opened my phone that morning. Maybe a grocery coupon, maybe a weather alert, but certainly not another picture that made my breath catch. It was a new family portrait, shared by Vera, of course. Same living room, same couch, same layout I had once designed with Adrian when they bought that house. My old house. They'd kept the blue velvet curtains, the coffee table we picked out from that antique market in Fredericksburg. Even the hand-stitched quilt I'd made for Owen's 2nd birthday was still draped across the back of the couch like a museum prop. Everyone was in the photo. Adrian, Vera, Owen, even the dog. But I wasn't. Not that I was behind the camera. No. I wasn't there at all. It didn't sting like it used to, not immediately. The hurt came in waves now, delayed, then sharp, like phantom pain. Later that afternoon, my neighbor Denise forwarded me a listing from a local buy-and-sell group. "You might want to see this," she'd written. The item was unmistakable. A vintage Lego set, boxed, barely used. I recognized it from the floral paper I'd used to wrap it last Christmas. The listing read, "Excellent condition. Ideal for kids whose grandparents don't overstep." Seller, Vera K. I stared at the screen, blinking slowly. There was no anger, just a cold, quiet click inside me, like a switch had been thrown. I didn't call. I didn't text. I drove. The sun was setting when I parked outside their house. It was a Thursday. Trash bins lined the curb, and a sprinkler sputtered in the neighbor's lawn. I rang the doorbell. Vera answered, surprised but composed. "Marlene," she said. No smile. "Is something wrong?" I didn't waste time. "I saw the post, and the listing," I said calmly. "Oh?" She glanced back, as if hoping Adrian would appear and rescue her. He didn't. "I don't care that you're selling it. It's yours to do with what you want. But don't insult me in the caption. Don't turn my gift into a punchline." She folded her arms, defensive. "We're trying to move forward with our own boundaries. You need to respect that." I stepped back, not out of fear, but control. "You can sell my gifts, sell my memory, but don't sell my love like it's cheap," I said. She didn't answer, just closed the door softly, as if that made her the polite one. I sat in my car for a long while before driving home. It was dark by the time I stepped into my house. The only light came from the small lamp in the hallway, the one Owen used to call the fire mushroom. I went to the office and opened a drawer I hadn't touched in months. Inside were receipts, emails, old messages from Adrian, screenshots I'd saved not for revenge, but because I needed proof that I wasn't imagining all of this. I started compiling photos of the gifts I'd sent, scans of returned mail, the text Adrian sent on Owen's birthday telling me, "Don't confuse your past with our future." The next morning, I called Adrian. He answered, "What is it, Mom?" "I'm done pretending," I said. "You can control the house, the photos, the posts, but you won't control the truth." There was silence. "You've made your narrative clear. Now I'm preparing mine. If Vera's little jabs continue, if my name keeps being dragged in your circles, I won't remain silent." He didn't yell, didn't curse. He just said, "I don't have time for this." "Then make time," I said, and hung up. That night, I opened a folder on my computer and titled it, "For Owen." I began scanning every card he ever made me, every drawing he'd scribbled on my fridge, every photo of us in the park, or reading books, or baking cookies with too much cinnamon. I saved them all. "If he forgets," I whispered to the screen, "I won't." The email came the next morning. Subject line, "Intent to pursue false documentation." The subject line read, "Intent to pursue false documentation." I had barely finished my first sip of coffee. The mug was still warm in my hands when I opened the email. It wasn't from Adrian. It was from someone named Jennifer Morales, a partner at a firm I didn't recognize. Vera's side. The body was short, professional, like someone brushing dust off a file. It claimed that the medical documents I'd shared were misleading in nature and appeared manipulated to elicit sympathy or induce guilt. The tone wasn't accusatory. It was surgical. I sat still for a while, reading it again. Not angry, not afraid, just stunned. I picked up the phone and dialed Adrian. It rang once, twice. Voicemail. "Adrian," I said, trying to keep my voice even. "You know I didn't fake this. I raised you better than to think I would ever weaponize my health." I hung up. I didn't cry. I walked to the filing cabinet in the hallway, pulled out the folder labeled Health, and stapled the email to the front. One more document in a growing stack. Later that week, I went to church. I didn't feel holy. I just needed a place where people looked you in the eye. During coffee hour, someone touched my elbow. Jeanette from the choir. "I'm sorry, She hesitated. "I saw the post Vera made, about the fabricated records." I blinked. "Did she tag me?" "No," Jeanette said quickly, "but she didn't have to." I stood there, cup in hand, feeling something curdle just beneath the surface. Not rage, not grief, disgust. I had never once been called dishonest in my life. Not by a boss, not by a neighbor, not by Adrian, not until he became Vera's husband. "And what do you believe?" I asked her. Jeanette looked away. By the time I got home, the pain had settled into a familiar ache. I went online to distract myself. That's when I saw the school newsletter. The district had posted a feature about Owen's class project on Community. There was a comment thread below, full of parents congratulating their kids. And then Vera's comment, "Let's teach our kids that boundaries matter, even with blood relatives." A friend had tagged me in it. I took a screenshot. Then another, just in case. I closed the browser and opened a drawer in the hallway table. Inside was a blank manila envelope. I didn't seal it, just placed the screenshots inside. The next morning, I booked an appointment with an attorney. The office was quiet, the receptionist polite. I didn't say much, just slid the envelope across the desk and said, "They're calling me a fraud. I want that to stop." We spoke for less than an hour. I left with a letter in my purse, a cease and desist, unsigned, unsent. But it was there. That night, I sat down at the kitchen table, not to write a statement, not to prepare a lawsuit. I wrote a letter, but not to Adrian, to Owen. "Someday," I wrote, when you're old enough to read this without fear, I hope you understand that I never stopped loving you. I was there, even when I wasn't allowed in the room. I didn't disappear. I was erased. The words came easily, like they'd been waiting for permission. I didn't seal that letter either. Just folded it, placed it in the folder I'd started after the Lego set, the pie, the deleted voice message. In the silence of the house, I pulled out the USB drive Lars had given me months ago. I hadn't listened to it yet, but I was ready. The USB drive clicked into place, and I hit play. The truth had waited long enough. The click of the USB drive sliding into place was soft, but it might as well have been thunder. I hadn't touched it since Lars handed it to me months ago. He'd said, "Just listen to it when you're ready," in that gentle way people do when they know you won't be. But now I was ready. Or maybe I was just done being unready. The file loaded automatically, no title, just a date from years back. The audio started with the scratchy hum of background noise. Then Adrian's voice, barely older than a boy's, came through. "She always did more for my sister," he said. "Gifts, attention. She even picked her up from school more often." Then silence. Then Lars, quiet but firm. "Maybe she didn't have a choice, man. Maybe she wasn't trying to choose between you two. Maybe she was just surviving." Another pause. Adrian again. "I just thought, if she cared more, she would have been there more." Lars replied, "She was there, just in ways you didn't look for." I sat perfectly still as the file ended, not even realizing I'd stopped breathing halfway through. I hadn't expected vindication, but there it was, recorded, unfiltered, truth from Adrian himself. He had believed I was absent, while I'd worked 2 jobs to keep the lights on. He'd mistaken exhaustion for abandonment. That same afternoon, I received an email from Owen's school district. Routine update. But at the bottom, there it was in black and white. The emergency contact field now listed family friend. My name was gone. They didn't just cut me out. They replaced me. I closed the laptop without finishing the rest of the email. Walked to the kitchen, poured myself a glass of water, even though I wasn't thirsty. That night, I printed the transcript of the recording. Highlighted the part where Adrian said, "She always did more for my sister." Underlined, "if she cared more." I folded the pages and slid them into an envelope addressed to Adrian. No threats, no pleas. Just a note. If you ever wonder who I was, start here. I addressed a second envelope to Owen. Same transcript, same message, but this one I didn't send. Instead, I labeled it, "For Owen, when you're ready." The next morning, I stood in front of the photo wall in the hallway. Family portraits, birthday parties, Thanksgiving tables, all frozen smiles from another lifetime. I took them down. One by one, in their place, I pinned Owen's drawings, crayons on construction paper. The one with our stick figure versions baking cookies. The one where I'm a rocket ship and he's the moon. This wasn't erasure. This was reclaiming. I opened my journal and wrote one sentence. This isn't revenge. This is remembrance. Then I closed it and sat in the quiet. I didn't block their numbers. I just stopped waiting for them to call. The envelope sat on my desk for 2 days before I mailed it. Quiet, plain, addressed to my attorney. Inside it was a single page, handwritten, just like I used to do when I wrote notes for Adrian's lunchbox. "I'd like to revise my will," it read. "Please remove my son, Adrian Klein, from any inheritance designation. This isn't out of bitterness. This is out of peace." I signed it. "This isn't revenge," I wrote in the margin. "It's relief." There was no ceremony to it. I dropped it in the mail slot outside the courthouse and didn't look back. On the way home, I stopped at the hardware store, bought a small lockbox, and went through the drawers of my desk. That's when I found the card. It was in the 3rd drawer from the bottom, tucked behind expired coupons and faded notepads. A birthday card I'd written for Owen 2 years ago and never sent. Bright green envelope, balloon stickers on the back. Inside, "Happy birthday, sweet boy. Love always, Grandma. The ink hadn't faded, but my roll had. I didn't send it. Instead, I added it to the memory box I'd started filling with pieces of a life no longer lived out loud. A lock of Owen's baby hair. A photo of him in my garden, holding a tomato like it was gold. A broken button from the jacket I patched when he spent the weekend at my place that one rare time. I closed the box gently and set it on the top shelf of my closet. A few days passed before anything shifted. Then, like a ripple, it came in the form of a school district email. I almost deleted it, assuming it was another PTA update I wasn't invited to. But this one had an attachment. Owen's class had submitted video presentations on Someone Who Inspires Me. In the recording, Owen stood in front of a drawing. 2 stick figures, one with curly hair and glasses. "This is my grandma," he said softly. "She used to read me stories and tell me why trees lose their leaves." I didn't cry. I watched it again, twice. Then I sent it to my own inbox, so I wouldn't lose it. That same week, I made 3 changes. I deleted every family group chat on my phone. I joined a support circle for estranged parents that met every second Thursday at the library downtown. And I called Pastor Ellis to ask if I could start a volunteer storytelling program for the kids in our church. He didn't hesitate. "We'd be lucky to have you, Marlene." And just like that, I had Saturdays again. I began sorting through books, some worn, some I hadn't read since Adrian was in middle school. I labeled bins: imagination, courage, friendship. It felt like opening a window that had been painted shut for years. One Sunday morning, I took a drive out to the lake where Adrian and I used to go fishing. The water was still. The same rock I used to sit on, still smooth and warm from the sun. I sat there for a while, letting the breeze tug at my sleeves, listening to the rustle of the reeds. And then, as soft as a sigh, I whispered, "I was a good mother. I remember." Owen's voice echoes in my head. Maybe he'll remember too. Looking back, I realize that silence doesn't always mean defeat. It can be the beginning of reclaiming your peace. Sometimes, letting go of who you used to be to the people who won't see you anymore is the bravest thing you'll ever do. I've learned that family isn't just blood. It's who shows up, who remembers, and who values your voice. If you're going through something like this, estrangement, grief, feeling unseen, know this: you're not alone, and you are not invisible. Your story still matters. Your love still counts. What about you? Have you ever had to let go to protect your peace? Do you believe silence can be strength? I'd love to hear your story. If this video touched something in you, comment with a 1 or share where you're watching from. And if it didn't, I welcome your thoughts too. Let's talk about it in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe if you want more stories like this. Your support helps keep these voices alive.